It's given us another day, folks. Let's just make sure we're live on the YouTube. That's the big one. The big one is the YouTube. There it is. There it is. Yes. Yes. Oh, we're live. Awesome. What's up, everybody? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day. It is Tuesday, May 19th, in this quarantine of our year of our Lord, 2020. Stumbled over that there. I hope you are staying well. I hope you are staying safe. I hope you are staying home. I hope you are staying just totally awesome. I hope everything you ever dreamed of is happening right now, right at this very moment. Everything you've ever I want to accomplish. I hope you're doing it. That's what I hope. I'm Ron Placone. This is Get Your News On with Ron. And we got a special guest today. We got a lot of interesting stuff. So Nancy Pelosi, of all people, is the only person who may be able to save the privacy of your browsing history. We're going to get into that later in the show. Also, Amazon really appreciates their employees to the shock of nobody. We're going to look into that. But first, we got a guest today. So this guy is a friend of the show. He's been on the show a couple times. He is affiliated with Citizens Media, and he hosts the podcast Activist MMT. Please welcome back to the show my go-to guy for MMT stuff, Jeff Epstein. Not the Jeff Epstein. This is a good Jeff Epstein. Jeff, what's up, buddy?
Hello, Ron. Everybody hear me good there?
Yeah, you're coming in clear, man.
All right. So why am I your MMT guru? Why?
You're my MMT guru because you were the first person to ever contact me and want to talk about it. And you became my go-to guy.
That's secondary. Primary is that I sing harmony on your theme song.
And you sing. Well, I was going to get to that because yeah, for anyone not in the know, Jeff is the harmony on my theme song. You hear the first verse to Get Your News On with Ron, and then it's repeated, and there is a lovely high harmony. That high harmony is sung by Jeff. He has a lovely singing voice. And I got to tell you, dude, I think I've gotten, I want to say 2 emails. Yeah, it was definitely no more than 2. It might have only been 1, but there was somebody who actually thought you were the bad guy, Jeff Epstein.
Sang he recorded the harmony right before
he recorded the harmony. Somebody emailed me and they were like, "Ron, do you really think
USB? There was a USB with a piece of a paper T-shirt on it."
Right, and he recorded that. They were like, "Ron, I don't think it's good that you affiliate with such people." I'm like, "You really?" I should have responded to that person and be like, "Don't tell anybody. He's hiding out in my apartment." Like,
I find it really funny that Jeff Epstein is such a prominent part of Graham Elwood's channel. So every time Jeff Epstein, he has to distinguish. So I am the Jeff Epstein that did not kill himself with a paper T-shirt.
Neither was the other dude, actually. But you're not the bad guy, Jeff Epstein. but yeah, no, it's funny. There was actually this Twitter thread once where it was like everybody, and I wish you would have been in it. I don't think you were because I looked for you in it and I didn't see you. But it was like everybody. Like somebody tweeted out like, man, it's really rough having this name right now. And I forget what their name was, but it was one of those things. They had the same name as somebody. Mm-hmm. I think it was actually someone else named Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah. So
where they were like,
vaguely recall.
Did you see this? Yeah. I think it was a guy. His name was Harvey Weinstein. He wasn't but he was like, this has been really difficult. And for all you people tweeting me, I'm not him. And then like other people were tweeting underneath it, and they were like, there was like a Ted Bundy, and he was like, "I feel your pain."
Do you know Isha Krishnaswamy of Historically podcast? Have you heard of this?
I've heard of the name, but I'm not familiar.
She tagged me in. She tagged me into this conversation. She said to this person tagging me, "You have no idea," because my name on Twitter is Citizens Media TV. It's not Jeff Epstein. So right.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, there's more than you're not the only other Jeff Epstein either. It's a very common name.
No,
so it's there's a bunch of y'all out there. And I know one. I know a Jeff Epstein, a good Jeff Epstein that sings songs and studies MMT. So let's talk about what's happening now first. I mean, you reached out to me and you said there's a question that you want to re-answer that you answered on this show previously, which I'm excited to get to that because I didn't watch the clip. I decided, I mean, we sound tested the clip to make sure we could hear it, but I didn't really watch the whole thing, so I don't know
Aside from
exactly.
being discouraged about your weight, which you look great, Ron.
No, I have. We're gonna see that in a second. But no, it's been hard. I mean, you look great. Actually, you look you look fantastic. I mean,
Wow.
you're a trim guy, and you're continuing to be a trim guy. But I'm having a hard time keeping my weight down during this pandemic. And
Wow.
when we watch this video clip, that's really gonna show. You look great. I mean, you're you just don't have the glasses on. You look even younger than last time. But so lucky you, but but
Well,
not
my
me.
insides are like 30 years older than I am on the outside.
Oh,
So,
you have kids and stuff during this thing, man. I mean, that's gotta be you guys gotta have your hands full.
oh, they're such a blessing. I am not sick of them at all.
Well, it's because your kids aren't super young. I mean, we don't have to talk, but it's like, your kids have their own lives at this point. It's not like they're infants.
No, actually, my older one is really enjoying time by himself. He likes
Yeah.
to have his office, which is just a 2-foot space between his bed and the window. That's his
good.
office, and he just like goes in there with a blanket over his head, and that's what he likes to do. So
I feel like as far as kids are concerned, and I don't have kids, so I'm just like guessing, but I feel like the only people who really have it, who really won in this scenario, are the people who, were pregnant and were able to have their children. And now they're like, well, I have my children and I'm not going to have to miss anything because we're all stuck inside. Like we're all, so that's like the one scenario where it's like, well, that's actually kind of lucky. Aside from the pandemic,
aside from the people, dying and suffering in mass quantities.
Well, of course,
this pandemic has actually been a blessing. It has been. I mean, luckily, my wife's a teacher, so she's teaching. She's full-time teaching through Google Chromebook, and so we can pay our bills. Luckily, but because of the pandemic, I mean, it's crazy. I have done so many interviews for my podcast. California, Ireland, Scotland, Virginia, LA, New York. And it's like, we're trapped at home. And it's like, I have to always remind myself, to a serious extent, this is because we're privileged. We are privileged. And I can't imagine how many people don't have this kind of access and not stressing about bills and stuff, but
a lot. Well, and just access to the internet. I mean, there's a lot of people, and that's because that on this show I talk a lot about city-owned internet, municipal broadband. One of the silver linings, and in something like this, you have to, you have to realize that the silver linings are there, and that we're going to overcome this, and hopefully we'll be a better society for it. I hope. It's not guaranteed, but I hope. But people are realizing that the internet, A, should be a utility in our life, and B, they're realizing how many people don't have access to decent internet and how necessary it is. So, I really hope that when it's physically able to be more of a front and center issue, that city internet really takes more of a front seat now, because people are realizing how essential it really is.
I agree with that. And I just am reading a book right now where he brings up the idea, and I agree with him, that anything that is an inherently network kind of a thing, meaning internet, meaning highways, meaning trains, that kind of a thing, is really not appropriate to be in private hands.
I'm with you.
And really should actually be federal, not just city. I mean, city's sort of, great first step. I'm with you on that. But it really should be a nationalized utility, telephones, so on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it totally should be. I mean, the reality of it is we're probably going to have to build it one city at a time. Like that's just probably the way it's going to happen, because, but yeah, if we ever were able to get a federal thing, and it would probably be like municipally, like built at the municipal level and run at the municipal level, but there is some oversight and some like a bigger safety net, I guess.
Well, the whole it's just like public education. It's ideally locally administered, federally funded.
Right.
And they give some broad requirements for their funding, but overall it's federally funded but locally administered, which would fit into what you want to do anyway. If I may, I actually had a question for you, and you told me, very wonderful surprise, that you are now somewhat more into MMT since you met. Can you tell that story? Can you just what happened? That
I mean, I don't know if there's that much of a story, but sure. I mean, when Graham Elwood and I were doing our tour of Australia, we met up with a couple. I guess you would say well, they're professors, and I guess you could even
PhD,
say
MMT economists, absolutely.
MMT economist.
Stephen Hale and Phil Wan, is that right?
Yeah. And great guys, and talking to them was just so humbling because they are just so crazy intelligent. Like they're just so I felt, I felt very dumb talking to them, but not in a way that it was like I didn't feel bad about it. Like I felt awesome talking to these people. You know what I mean? Like I felt like they didn't make me feel dumb because they were like, peasant. They're just like, hey, this is what we're passionate about, and we're gonna just like open up your mind and tickle your brain a little bit, if that's
They're
okay,
teachers.
amidst
They're
a couple
teachers.
pints.
Yeah.
And good ones at that. So yeah, it was a really cool conversation, and Steven recommended the book Debt, which I read. That was how I opened my 2020. That was my first book of the year.
That's great.
Which I feel like it's a very intense book, and I reached out to the author's publicist. I forget. I think David. I forget his last. Yes, Kramer. Thank you.
Graeber.
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 That's right. Graeber. Yes, thank you. It's an intense book, but I mean, it's one of those books, and I hope he agrees to do the show. I'm a little intimidated by it because I want to ask good questions. But it's like, how do you narrow down the questions you'd want to ask this guy when he has this? I mean, that book was like,
well, it's
how many pages?
Oh, it's like 600 pages. I read the first 7 chapters, and it was a bit much for me as well. But what it is about is a major foundation upon which MMT is based. One of the major foundations upon which MMT is based, and that is the state theory of money. It's chartalism. It's called chartalism. State theory of money is the false idea that many people have, is that we had barter, and that it became so complicated that governments would then come in, or they would create governments in order to make that bartering system easier, and that's where money came in. That's not what happened. There's no historical evidence to show that. No major economies have ever run on that. And this book is not just a book. It's an anthropological, like, super documented, like there's a whole, like, probably 100 pages of sources in the back.
And just to clarify here, like, for anyone listening who's like, well, wait a second. He wasn't saying that bartering never, ever happened.
No, not at all.
He was just saying that, like, it happened on like a micro level and between neighbors.
Cigarettes in prison.
And it was, sure. And it was to an extent part of an economy the same way it is now. I mean, that happens now. What he's saying is it's not like that was the big man on campus, so to speak. And all of a sudden, innocent old government and the innocent old ruling class was like, gee, this is just too complicated. And the guy who has chickens maybe isn't as lucky as the guy who has cows. We got to figure out a better way to do this. Here's some money, people. It didn't work out that way. It was more like, hey, we need to find some way to just like maintain the social order and get what we want. So here's this idea of money, even though you guys already had different currencies that had its own value. Maybe it was salted fish, maybe it was whatever else, but we're going to come in with money because this is kind of a better way for us to manage things. Because I think, and let me know if you agree with this, maybe you do, maybe you don't, and you're more into this than I am, but I think there's a component of MMT that is just basically like one of the bylines of it. There's many bylines of it, but one of the bylines could just be, yeah, a lot of the stuff you're taught about money isn't necessarily completely wrong, but is very, very incomplete.
Well, this is what it is. Everything you're taught about money, some of it's just plain wrong, but a lot of it
sure
is just upside down. Just turn your understanding upside down and you got it.
Well, even in like the first chapter of that book, I mean, I was ready to just put my yellow vest on and start running out in the street. I mean, just like this whole thing where you're taught, and it even goes back to biblical times. So like it's ingrained in our heads, pay your debts. That's what you owe to society. A man with debts, like what's wrong with you?
Jesus
There's a problem.
died for your sins, so now you are in debt.
Now you're in debt. Yes, that's in like the first chapter. And he goes, why is debt a one-sided thing morally? Why are you the person holding the debt? You have this huge moral obligation
before you're even born.
Before you're even born. But the person giving the debt, the person who, which by the way, they didn't actually give you anything. I mean, especially in the case of a bank, they're just printing stuff and handing it out because they have the authority to do so. They didn't take a hit here. Why do they have why is there no moral obligation when you see an entire generation of people not able to buy houses, some of them not able to start families because of this predatory loan practices for student debt? Why is there no moral obligation there to cancel that stuff for the betterment of society? We know the answer to that, Jeff, but it's like that's one of the things that people never take a step back and think about it and say, you know what? Screw this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's the foundation. That is the seed that everything else, every other understanding comes from. And the twist of that is the seed that every other myth comes from. The idea that taxes pay for stuff, the idea that the deficit and the debt and fiscal responsibility and how you're going to pay for that, that all comes from the idea that the state theory of money is wrong and that it actually was barter. That's where it actually comes from. And it takes a long time to sort of understand that. But you, as someone that has read debt, you can sort of start to see that connection, that is the seed, the idea of barter and the idea that money is valuable within itself, as opposed to a contract that defines a relationship, and the relationship is valuable. If the money itself is valuable, that is the barter, that is the not state money story, and that is the seed upon which all of the lies are based. That's where the household analogy comes from, that pretending that the government is just a super big company, as opposed to the upside down entity, the God, which is a completely different story.
So now we're in this situation where, they have said on TV now, like it's out in the open, where they're just like, hey, how did you give the banks trillions? And they say with a straight face, oh, we just moved the decimal number. We just moved it. And then we were like, here's trillions, banks. So now more and more people are realizing, oh, wait a second. You can just hand the banks trillion by moving a decimal point, a la the movie Office Space. You could also do this.
That really an Office Space? I have to see that again now.
Well, kind of.
I didn't know NMT when I saw it.
No, well, yeah, kind of. Like that's what they did. They did a thing where they got like a fraction of the decimal point in their own bank account. And they were going to just kind of skim pennies here and there for years and make money off of it. But he moved the decimal point too far.
I vaguely remember, but I didn't know MMT at the time.
So they basically committed a big. Oh yeah, no, you can totally use that movie as like a conversation piece, I think, and all that stuff.
Well, finish your thought. I interrupted you.
No, that's it. But
the core is another one. The core. You see the core?
I have not.
You know what I'm talking about? It's a very silly adventure action movie. It's just a dumb fun movie where the core of the earth has stopped moving, Ron.
Okay.
So they have to drill a hole tens of thousands of miles down to the core, as if that's possible. And they have to send some nuclear bombs to start the core of the earth to move again, as if that's going to make a difference. So this guy says, I've worked on this technology. I just don't have the funding. It'll take about 12 years. And so this guy from the government says, how much would it take to make it happen in 3 months? He's like, $50 billion. And the guy says, will you take a check?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the same thing.
We can actually do that. And we could do that to fund things that actually help people.
Mm-hmm. I want to go ahead.
No. And I was going to say, and Stephanie Kelton explains how that would work just with basic note cards, where she's like, look, you put all these note cards into circulation. Well, these other note cards are being used for this, and this. And this is how MMT works.
Right. Regarding the trying to get this fed. Can I get this? There we go. I just put a link into the comments. I just a video with Graham that I did, wonderful video that was just released yesterday, actually talks about the Fed, like you just mentioned, because yes, the government did give the rich tons and us hardly at all. But it is not accurate to say that the Fed gave trillions to the banks. They did in a sense, but they only did it because the banks gave them that exact amount in return. It was a loan. They didn't just give bankers money, like, just handing us a check. And I go into this in depth in this video with the Graham. I just put the link in the description, in the comments. So it is true, the overall statement that the government gave way too much to the rich and hardly any to us is absolutely true. But the specific that the Federal Reserve gave banks trillions, they did. But there was a condition on those trillions, and that the banks had to give that exact amount back in their treasuries.
Well, explain the nuts and bolts of that, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of like, and Peter Joseph went into this a good bit in his new movie, and I think Debt goes into this a little bit as well, where it's like they're basically just scratching each other's backs, more or less.
Well, I mean, to give them cheap loans is definitely a help, but that's very different from saying we're just giving them trillions and they can do whatever they want without them having to give anything back. So giving you money, giving you a grant without, just like a paycheck, you did your work, but you have your money and you can keep it and you can do what you like and no strings attached. You don't owe it. That's a net financial asset after you pay your taxes. What's left is your wealth. That's your wealth. That's your net financial assets. That's what I'm calling it. Okay. That's very different than a loan.
Right.
So yeah, a loan, if a loan, even with 0%, that's helpful, but that's quite different than just giving you a net financial asset, just giving you a grant. So the Fed is absolutely helping the banks in that way, on top of all the coronavirus relief that the Congress is doing, which is just giving money to people straight. That's bad. That's absolutely just not good. But what the Fed is doing outside of that is giving loans to the banks. And yes, that's helpful. And we should have low interest loans as well. But we just need to understand that is not just giving free money like a check, like a grant. It's very different. It is a loan. It is a one-to-one asset swap. It's a swap of assets, one-to-one, an even swap. So it's just not quite as egregious. Like the anger is right. It's just that particular example is not an example of what we're upset about.
Well, I think there's more to it than that as far as what we're upset about, because really what they did, instead of just giving direct relief to people, which is something that you need to do in this case, they just kind of gave it to the banks and said, hey, deal with it. Give it to the people.
No, that's
and in
true.
a way, it was just to enhance the wealth of it. Because, I mean, keep in mind, the entities we're talking about, I mean, the big banks in this country, I mean, they have an endless runway. I mean, they're not going to run out of money anytime soon. It just keeps going. So this is just another decimal point for them.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, as part of the bigger picture, there's no doubt. You're exactly correct. And also, why are they doing these loans? Because what have they been doing for the past 10 years since 2008, except for continuing to screw everyone and not saving? Mm-hmm. So now they're running to the Fed and to the government saying we need a bailout. And so, they are getting free money from Congress because Congress is telling them to do it, but they're also getting these low interest loans, which also help. I mean, it's a different kind of a help. But, it's to a significant degree, this coronavirus bailout, as I see it, is really just an excuse to just bail out the banks for the past 10 years, bail out the big corporations for the past 10 years, not just the loans, but also the bailouts that is going mostly to, actual assets, actual net financial assets, free money to these corporations because they haven't prepared. The government hasn't prepared. They haven't made the corporations prepare. They've continued to screw the people, and they're bailing them out again under the guise of coronavirus relief.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's what they're going to do with a lot of that loan money too. They're going to use it to be predators to other people, which they already have.
That's true.
So what would you say? And then we're going to go to the video in just a second. But what would you say is kind of the big, like the big nuts and bolts lesson people should take away right now in relation to what MMT is, what it is all about, as it pertains to the current pandemic we're facing?
Well, let me say very generically first, and that is a new sort of elevator pitch, and that is you have to understand the truth in order to be able to properly understand what the solution is and how to stand up properly and how to refute the lies and understand that you're being tricked. And so my version of the truth, like there's all kinds of ways to look at the truth. Like, you know, a gemstone, you look at it different angles, it looks different, but they're all valid and it's all different angles of the truth. My particular angle that I'm interested in focusing on is economics. MMT is the truth about economics. So what we see as economics, like you can't escape your prison unless you could see the walls around you, and you can't defeat the beast unless you know its nature. So we know that something's wrong, but unless we really understand the nature of what that problem is, we don't even know what direction to face in. So we can't even know what the true, the solution should be. So as I see it, MMT is a lens, a glass lens that you look through, that when you're not looking through it, you see just nonsense. You see just crazy, complicated, everything's too hard, dark. And then when you look through this lens, it makes sense. The economy, the federal finance, it makes sense. And that's what MMT is. It's looking through that lens so you can see it as it already and has always been. And it cuts through all of those myths. So that's a generic answer of what I see MMT as. And some economists will say this. Bill Mitchell says it's a lens to see the economy as it actually is. As far as coronavirus, there's like the rent strikes. People are desperate right now to pay rent. And that the landlord, and we'll set aside the issue of people need homes, shelter to survive. So why do we make them pay for things that they need to survive on a day-to-day basis? Let's just set that aside. People have to pay their rent. Landlords depend on that rent. Landlords can't pay their bills unless they get that rent. Those vendors of the landlord can't pay their bills unless they get that income. So it starts this massive, like, sort of matrix of a cycle, and it creates this vacuum of people needing that money. And that vacuum is, by definition, what makes it possible for the federal government to safely issue the currency to pay that rent, to pay the landlords, to pay all their vendors, and on and on and on and on. Because the currency issuer is the only one who can backstop that whole cycle such that everyone in the cycle is left whole. No one else has that ability to create money. And since they can create money, they can fill that vacuum of need during this crisis that no one else can. So the fact that they're not doing it means that it puts pressure on states to have to do it, puts pressure on municipalities, it puts pressure on people to have to demand it, which puts pressure on landlords and all of these entities. So pretending that they can't create that money puts pressure on everybody else, which makes people fight each other, and it just creates a big old mess. But the vacuum, that need, is what by definition means that the government can safely create it without causing economic problems. And in fact, what's the only bad thing is that they're not doing it. It's like saying, it's not that we can't afford Medicare for all. What we can't afford is this horrendous system that we have now. We must do it. We must do it to stop all of the suffering. And they must pay this rent, or I would say more MMT economists, I think, would be more towards just pay wages, pay everybody's wages, 100%.
Yeah. Well, that's what they're doing in a lot of other countries.
Right.
I mean, in England
80%
right
even
now,
in England, even though they have Tories,
80%.
they're still paying 80%. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think eventually I was talking to Gordon Dimmick about a week ago. He's a YouTuber in England, and he was saying eventually it's going to be like 50, but for the next few months it's or potentially it's going to be 50, but for the next few months it's 80%. And then they've basically just frozen payment like that, like they've just completely and I think I think freeze means, that they just put it on hold and then you owe it all later. And forgiveness just means it's just not a thing right now, and that's what we need. We just need the forgiveness where it's like, yeah, you can't pay rent right now. So landlords don't have to pay mortgages. You don't have to pay rent. And as you're saying, the government, can, create this, not, the Fed, like they can create this, and then it's just completely forgiven. Correct.
Right. So they can pay it and fill that vacuum,
Mm-hmm.
or they can pop the vacuum on the other end so that you don't have to fill it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can do a combination of the two. There's a lot of different ways that you can do it, but the only one that can do it is the central government, the issuer of the currency. They're the only ones that have the power because they can afford to spend more, even though they don't currently have more, because they don't have anything. They have the ability to create, but they don't have. No one else has the ability to create on demand, and so they're the only ones that can backstop it. But how they choose to do it, there's a whole bunch of different ways to go about it, on the back end, on the front end.
So let's go to the video. Is it time?
Sure, go for it.
All right. So you
want me to set it up a little bit?
So, well, yeah, no, if you want. So basically you said that. Now, do you feel different about this because of information or because of what has happened in the world since you first answered this question?
Well, I'm very curious about what you think about it after you watch it, and then I'll tell you what I think. But this has been, I knew that something was off when I first heard it. And I put a lot of thought into it. I wrote the whole transcript, actually, of this video. I wrote the whole transcript, and I was like reading it and trying to figure it out. And I couldn't put my head around it, but I knew that there was something more that I wanted to say. And I wrote you like a week ago or something, that I figured it out that day. I finally figured it out, and I think you're going to understand it, and especially with it was November 98, 2008. Yeah, whatever, a year and a half ago, November 2018.
Yeah.
So I wonder, with you now being a year and a half ahead, and you having read Debt and being a little more into it, I wonder what you think. But I look forward to now telling you, like, with confidence, what my response will be.
All right. So let's watch.
Don't you think he's also playing the political game there?
And the he I'm referring to here is Bernie Sanders.
Yep.
Okay. So don't you think he's playing the political game here?
I mean, if a politician tomorrow just said, "Oh, MMT, we're just going to print it off and that's going to take care of it," we're still a long way from that messaging being effective on a mass level, which I think just being practical, that's just the reality. So
that is true.
This idea of exposing where the quote budget really goes, I think is still very worthwhile messaging. It's worthwhile to point out to people that the reason we don't have, or one of the many reasons why we don't have the types of programs other countries take for granted, is because we spend all of that money that we're told is all the money that's allotted on bombs. I still think that's a worthwhile message.
Well, again, if we say, we absolutely should say that our military is belligerent and it needs to be lowered. We absolutely should say that. We should fight for that as hard as we can, hard as we do. Same thing with the rich. We should tax the rich. They're just too powerful. But it is critical that we don't then say we must reduce the military because they're belligerent, and just imagine what we could use that money for. We could fix Flint's pipes. We could give us healthcare. We could pay off student debt. That's the connection that I'm urging everyone to break. It's just that separation.
I understand where you're coming from. I do disagree slightly. I think that you need to, if you really show people how catastrophic having an economy of war really is, they're going to be more susceptible to, what's the type of society we could have. And if you show them in a more basic economic way, such as making the connections of, well, gee, we could fix homelessness, we could have universal health care, we could have free college, then you're kind of leading them more towards and by the way, they just print money at will for all these disastrous programs that pads their own pocket. We could use this knowledge to start funding and sustaining programs that benefit everybody. I think you're pitting two things against each other that aren't necessarily against each other.
Okay. I thought that was a fair exchange. I mean, I kind of see where we were both coming from.
Sure.
I do still see, and part of this is my own experience, and I'm trying to remember exactly when that took place in 2018.
It was November.
But, it was November. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think it was. Sometimes, the years get foggy as I get older, but I think that was right when. So this might have been right around the time I got back from from the UK. I went to the UK and I went to Ireland, and I remember that I was in like the Parliament Center or whatever it's referred to as in Scotland, in Edinburgh, Scotland, where you kind of you saw the room where they deliberate things like their government, and they have the staff that they use there, and it was a really interesting cultural experience. And they had this pie chart that talked about how they spend their money. And it was, there was a little section for the arts. There was a section for education. There was a section for healthcare. There was a section. And then there was this little, and I, it always dawned on me that it's like, if the United States had this, the United States can't have this anywhere.
Oh, so they spend better is what you're saying. I didn't get that. Okay.
They what?
They spend better is what you're saying. I didn't get that.
Right. Because if the United States ever had something like that, it would just be like, war, and then a little sliver, and it would just say everything other. Totally, man. And I think that's in that clip, that was what I was getting at. And so, yeah, I do think it's important that we start breaking down those preconceived notions that people have, because there are so many people in this country who just think, what do you mean we spend too much on defense? Do you not support the troops? And it's like, no, that's not what's going on here. First of all, if you want to talk about the military budget, a lot of it goes to pad the pockets of Halliburton and all these other special interest defense groups. It doesn't go to the troops because, our troops that are on the ground in these wars, if they ruin a pair of boots, they got to pay for a new one out of their own pocket. So the money certainly ain't going to them. I do see the value in that. But what did you want to update on that segment?
Sure. Okay. I have no.
Now you got the glasses on. You're recreating the whole thing.
I wrote notes. I want to get this right. I have no problems with anything that you just said. In fact, I agree with everything that you just said. This is my problem. We should do all of those things. I personally don't choose to participate in that side of it. I choose to participate in the fighting for good things side. But there's plenty of people that want to do both, and that's a good team. We're a good team. I have plenty of friends that want to do that side. I have plenty of friends that want to join me on my side.
What do you mean that side? Like what?
Pushing for good things as opposed to exposing bad things.
Okay,
both are
important.
Okay. Both are important. I choose to do the pushing for good things stuff, but we should, be a team and do both. But this is the only thing that I do have a problem with. We should do that, but there are people currently dying on the streets right now, drinking poisoned water right now. They are suffering. They're going bankrupt. And we need to help them right now. And MMT shows that we can help them right now. And I do not think that doing those things, if it takes us away for 1 second from stopping the bleeding, that's not a good thing. Now, what I think we should do is that we should stop that bleeding, fix those pipes, start, get them healthcare and so on, and just stabilize them. I'm not saying cure them. I'm just saying start the process, stop their bleeding. And then as soon as they're stable, that is when we can have these discussions of exposing the bad and pushing the good and taxing the rich because they're too damn rich, not because we need their money, reducing the military because they're too belligerent. We absolutely should do all of those things, but we have to stabilize the bleeding first. We have the power to do that. And I'm not saying that we should go out and spend 2 years making sure that they're cured. I'm saying that we should start that process of stopping that bleeding right now, because 3 really important things come from that. Number 1 is they immediately become healthier and they join us. They know that it is possible to do, which teaches them of what the system can do in addition to your method of exposing the bad side of it. And number 3, it shows they see that we care and we can create a team even more so by doing that. So I don't have a problem with any of what you're saying. We just got to stop the bleeding first.
I understand. I don't disagree with that point, but I guess what I'm saying from just an execution standpoint, everything you just described, you're going to come up with, and I'm talking about when you're talking to the general person, not somebody who's an MMT scholar, or somebody who just really is on top of all these things, but just the general person. you're still going to come up against how can we afford that?
Right. Well, they're
You're going
not
to come up against that. And that's where I say there's value in pointing out, well, this is where our resources are going right now.
Correct. And I don't disagree with that. But that person is not going to be the person drinking poisoned water that's going to turn to you and say, how are we going to pay for that?
It's true.
So there's that. It's the right thing to do, but we need to take care of the dying first. That's all that's important to me. That they're not going to be the ones that are going to say, how are you going to pay for it, the deficit, the debt, and we need to tax the rich. They just going to be, I don't want to drink poisoned water anymore.
Right, but they're also the ones that don't really have the power.
Well, that's the point.
I mean, at the end, it's like you have to get, you have to get some policy switches here, and you're going to come up against how are we going to pay for that? And you need to have, I think that all the messages are valuable. I'm not saying that, talking about how our resources are being exploited and benefiting the richest of the rich of the rich. I'm not saying that has value and an MMT message doesn't. I'm saying that they both have value and they're both necessary. I don't think you should have one and not the other. I agree.
I just had that qualifier, but
no. And that does make sense. I totally see where you're coming from. That makes a lot of sense.
Good. It's been a year and a half building up in me. It's finally out.
Well, I hope it was everything you were hoping for,
and more.
Oh, good. So let's go to some other kind of news of the day. And before we go there, are there any kind of final messages that you think people ought to know in regards to MMT just right now today?
It's most of what we hear about. They're saying it in England. They're saying it here. We are spending so much now that we are going to have to tighten our belts as soon as this crisis is over. And all they're saying is get ready for austerity. We can help you. We are choosing not to. So we're going to hide behind this shield of pretend economic falsehoods of fiscal responsibility. We care about the economy for your sake. It's all for the children. But what they are saying is this is a crisis for the privileged. We are going to take care of the privileged because this is a crisis for the privileged. Once this privileged crisis is over, we're back to the crisis for all of you guys. And now we're going to have to tighten our belts again. So you just have to continue to learn this kind of stuff to stop getting tricked, to stop believing this stuff so we can start demanding, what we need.
Well, let me ask you this, man. I feel like an awakening is slowly happening because I am seeing a lot more, and this is kind of just in, on Twitter and just like in conversation and just like around the world at large, more people than I think would have said something like this even a year ago are saying, well, when someone says, oh, I can't wait till we return back to normal, more and more people are saying, normal was the freaking problem.
Yep.
Normal's why we can't handle this now.
Right.
Normal's why we had a society that was not set up to handle a pandemic. So we have to have a different normal. We have to have a better normal.
We're gonna have a different normal whether we like it or not soon enough.
Well, that's true.
We're gonna have the pandemic and global warming and they're clearly somehow related. Normal is quickly changing. Like I think of my two little boys, 10 and 13, second half of their life. Give me a break. I'm pretty darkly cynical about our path. If we keep going down this path, I'm pretty darkly cynical on a grand scale. That doesn't mean we can't change our path. But the way that we can change our path is if we start to really understand the truth. And economics is not the only truth. That just happens to be the one that I choose to focus on.
Totally, man. All right, so let's go to some other stories, and then of course we'll plug everything you're into at the end here. So, Jeff, this will probably make you sleep easier at night. You said that you're a little bit of a cynical guy. This will make you less cynical because this is just amazing news.
I'm feeling a $40,000 ice cream refrigerator coming on. I don't
know. You have foreshadowed correctly, sir. So the future of the privacy of our browsing history lays in the hands of Nancy Pelosi. If that doesn't help you sleep easy, I don't know what does. She's the leader of the resistance, Jeff.
I am going to be using private browsing for everything.
But did you hear her call Trump fat, sort of?
Oh, well, and she also ripped up a piece of paper that he apparently...
She ripped up a piece of paper. She once clapped mildly condescendingly. She is the resistance, baby.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So check this out. Here's what's happening. And I'm sure you
say civil in public. I'm biting my tongue. Go ahead.
So MTV News did this alongside a Fight for the Future, which total disclaimer, I've collaborated with Fight for the Future before on an effort for net neutrality. I think very highly of the organization. But here's Evan Greer and a member of the ACLU. They did this on MTV News. So what happened was there's a resurgence of the Patriot Act, as there often is. And there was an amendment by Ron Wyden and Steve Daines that basically said, if you want to get somebody's browser history, a citizen's browser history, you need a warrant for something like that. There was an amendment for that. It failed in the Senate by one vote. One vote in the Senate. And a couple senators were not present for that vote. Bernie Sanders being among them, which was very, very disappointing. And as of now, unless I'm missing something, we still haven't really gotten an explanation as to why he wasn't present. And that was very disappointing. But here's the situation. This bill now goes back to the House, where Nancy Pelosi can just kind of tack the amendment on. And if the House moves it forward, it goes back to the Senate, where they could presumably, they would vote on it again, and hopefully those missing senators will be there. Let's watch the video.
Nancy Pelosi and Nancy Pelosi alone has the power to decide whether or not the Trump administration will be able to spy on your internet activity without a warrant.
That Nancy Pelosi alone part really, that was like Nancy Pelosi. I was like, oh man. And Nancy Pelosi alone, it's getting worse. But all right, so here's the situation.
This week, all eyes turn to Nancy Pelosi, who finds herself in an extraordinary position as Speaker of the House. We're talking about the USA Freedom Reauthorization Act, a controversial bill that would renew the U.S. government's mass surveillance program that was exposed by Ed Snowden in 2013 and then expired last year. That bill is now making its way back to the House of Representatives for a vote after a shocking upset in the Senate that no one saw coming. An amendment, sponsored by Senators Ron Wyden and Steve Daines, was introduced to update the law so that the government can no longer spy on your internet browsing and search history without a warrant. Hailed by privacy activists, it lost by one vote last week after 4 Democratic senators mysteriously failed to show up, including Bernie Sanders.
And frankly, it was just a procedural flub.
Evan Greer is a privacy rights activist and the deputy director of Fight for the Future, a nonprofit that's been preparing for this battle since the 2013 Snowden disclosures. She explained that even though the Wyden-Daines amendment missed in the Senate, there's now a second chance to get it passed in the House.
At a baseline level, here's what's going to happen. The bill, now that it has passed the Senate, is going to go back to the House. The House then has to vote on it again. As the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi could essentially just tack on the amendment that failed in the Senate and bring it up for a vote in the House.
That would send it back to the Senate, giving these guys a second chance to vote yes on Wyden-Daines.
Call Nancy Pelosi. She has the power to put this amendment back into place. We have a website set up, saveinternetprivacy.org, where you can just enter your phone number. We will connect you directly to her office.
On Sunday, the American Civil Liberties Union also sent a letter urging Pelosi to add the amendment to the bill.
So there you go. That's what's essentially going on here, Jeff. And here's another tweet I'll highlight here that kind of gives that information. And you can go to saveinternetprivacy.org, and you can also call Nancy Pelosi, the office at 202-930-8115. That's the public number for the office to demand that amendment, the Wyden-Daines amendment, be added back to the bill.
I have two thoughts about it when you're done.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I'm just encouraging people, use whatever messaging you need to message. You can say, hey, I know where there is a bunch of ice cream that she can access. Mm-hmm. Because she's only a 100 millionaire. She probably
filing
can't buy her own.
Cabinets filled with ice cream. Yeah.
Filing. So there you go.
two things. Just one and a quick aside. There was at the MMT International MMT conference in Long Island last September, back when we were allowed to go outside. There was actually a panel by Bill Black, who actually put bankers in jail during the S&L crisis, about how MMT is the only school of economic thought that actually integrates the findings of whistleblowers, because you can't know the truth unless you listen to all different things, and whistleblowers is a form of journalism. But I actually think that it might be possible to get her to do this, because I think that this could be considered like she's just done so much bad. The government has done so much bad under her watch, especially with coronavirus, that I feel like this could be successful, meaning we could get her to do this amendment, because I feel like it could be like a small gesture to get us to shut up about all the bad stuff that she's done during the coronavirus relief.
Not just that, but she's got to be a little bit worried about public opinion a little more than usual, because she knows she's got an opponent that's picking up some steam. Shahid Buttar just Marianne Williamson just endorsed him, which and that got some national play. Her endorsement of him, which I was happy to see. I mean, I'm rooting for Shahid. I hope he wins. He's been on the show a couple of times. And so, yeah, I mean, she's got to be kind of thinking, well, what can I do to look a little bit better to the public and look a little bit relatable? So, yeah, hopefully she does this, and then hopefully she still loses anyway. That's what I agree.
Yeah,
that's what I hope she does this, because we need her to, and then I hope she loses anyway, because I'd love to see Shahid Buttar replace her.
That would be nice.
But Jeff, maybe you've thought before that Amazon isn't the world's greatest company. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say like, maybe they're not like your favorite place in the world for a number of reasons. The exploitation of workers, the fact that they have gobbled up all competition in internet commerce, the fact
that
Jeff Bezos
pee in their pants in their vans.
Oh, yeah. There's an ambulance outside of warehouse facilities instead of providing proper air conditioning services. Oh, well, Jeff Bezos is the richest person on the face of the planet, has more wealth.
Potentially.
He's going to be a trillionaire, which, by the way, I tweeted this out. What do you call, any country that is on their way to getting their first trillionaire? Well, people are lined up for food out of the Great Depression. It's a failed state. That is a failed state. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it.
It's not just trillionaire. It's trillionaire during this mass suffering.
If money were seconds, right? If money were, and you hear this thrown around a lot, but I think it's worth repeating. If money were seconds, $1 million is about 11 and a half days. That's $1 million. That's a lot of money. That's about 11 and a half days. $1 billion is like 31 years. He's on his way to becoming a trillionaire.
Mm-hmm.
So just think about that. Like he cannot even fathom spending a fraction of his money. Like he will. It's like he has an entire coastline in his lifetime and in his children's lifetimes and in their children's lifetimes. They'll maybe be able to spend a slight finger nudge of sand. As far as the wealth he has.
And he is using, as most internet companies are, Google with schools and so on, to sell their Chromebooks. He is using this pandemic to further destroy physical stores, mom and pop stores, because people need them. And what other choices do we have? We're forced to, if we want a product, some products, that's where we have to go for some cases.
Oh, and he's trying to get brick and mortar stores too. I mean, that was another thing that he had rolling out before this pandemic, and I'm sure he's eventually going to get to it. I mean, he was going to have those Amazon brick and mortar stores.
Right. Well, now there'll be vacant stores ready and waiting for him after the pandemic's over.
And he's already got Whole Foods. I mean, that's one of the things, man. When I walk around my neighborhood, I'm so terrified at the idea that that's just these are local. That's why I don't know what your take is on takeout right now. But I'm of the persuasion of just proceed with caution. And my wife and I, we get takeout once a week, and we try to get something. Well, we definitely get something. There's no try. We get something from a local business because we don't want to see them be gone when this is all over.
Well, but that's true. And actually, I will not purchase anything from anyone during this crisis.
What do you do for food?
Oh, we don't eat. No, we go shopping, but we leave the perishables. Well, hold on, I'll explain that. But I just wanted to say, I have been buying gift certificates from my favorite local restaurant.
That's smart.
So
that's
that
really
we can
smart.
use it. We can keep them in business now, but we can use them as soon as this is over. I would say would be okay with takeout as long as it can be nuked. If it can be nuked, then we can kill whatever's on it. Otherwise, I would be pretty uncomfortable, especially cold.
Understandable.
But shopping, I go shopping like once every 2 or 3 weeks, spend an incredible, because I just don't want to do it often. I leave the perishables and I leave the non-perishables in my car for however many days. I open the boxes and dump whatever's in the box. We assume that that's clean. Everything else, milk jugs and so on, we just put on the table on newspapers and we wash it like dishes. And it takes a good hour plus, and that's what we do.
Yeah. We wipe down all the groceries and stuff like that. And we try to, we've been going, we try to get most of our produce and stuff from the farmers markets.
Yeah.
Just because it's healthier. It's just as risky as anything else. When you go to the grocery store, you're still taking a risk. You don't know who stocked those shelves. You don't, there's a risk to
actually
everything.
being in the grocery store. Being the risk itself. Yeah.
Right. So it's like you got to take some amount of risk, and unless you just have your own completely self-sustainable food source, which, I live in the Los Angeles area. That's not a possibility for me at all.
But that's actually,
don't have any space.
Yeah, no, but that actually brings up like Amazon, these international companies. So we buy everything, even the small things, from far away. So, even food, like watermelons come from China or whatever ridiculous kind of stuff like that. So not only do we get things from far away, and manufacturing has been sent overseas, and now manufacturing in the United States has been decimated. But because we get those things overseas, now they purchase local plots of land to drill oil or build a needless strip mall or a bank or whatever, so that when it becomes obvious that we really do need to get local again because of climate change, that it will be much more difficult. Because these plots of land that really need to be used for local education, local shopping, local produce, local, farming and so on, will have been taken over by some strip mall.
Because that's the most depressing element too, or one of the most depressing elements. Like just this idea that, again, it's like, well, when this is all over, all my favorite local establishments are going to be cheesecake factories and Starbucks and, and Amazon fronts or something.
Sure.
And it was set up this way by design. It's so sad that when you hear small business being uttered by our federal government, that's really a dog whistle. It's not actually looking out for small business. It's a lie. It's what it really is it's a dog whistle saying, "Hey, big corporations, we got some cash for you." When you even look at something like the PPP loan, Jeff,
go.
Yeah, well, they set it up so that it was basically this first come, first serve nonsense. So who's going to get it? The quote small business, which by the way, they designate small businesses quite liberally. Mm-hmm. So is it going to be the small business that has a team of attorneys getting ready to get their money at the hour it goes live? Or is it going to be the actual small business that has a family and has kids and is worried about their employees and is part of your community? It's a scam.
I mentioned to you an article that I wrote that I was hoping that you might cover. It is exactly on that, on the PPP.
Oh, cool.
It's on the PPP. It's on the PPP. How I don't even want to say. I would just love to see you take a look at that. It goes deep into the weeds of the PPP and just how big of a sham it is. It's not just a sham because I hear people complaining, oh, these big companies came in and stole from the PPP. Yeah, that's bad. But who allowed them? Who allowed this bill to be shammable in this way?
Why were they able to apply in the first place?
Right.
They should have never been able to apply.
Well, not just. The PPP was written to be a sham to allow this to happen. But to pretend that we're helping small businesses. Small businesses needed about 700 billion to pay people payrolls for 3 months. So Congress, who can create money, allocated 300, half of that. So hypothetically, that would have lasted for 100% of companies in the United States. That would have lasted 1.5 months. It lasted for 2 weeks. And those 2 weeks, only 6% of all American businesses got funds.
And then
that
what did they
includes
decide
the big
to do?
companies. That includes the big companies.
And then afterwards, they were like, well, that was kind of a flub. We're going to try it
Let's
again.
do it again.
Let's do it again. Let's do it again.
But
Screw it.
but this time, let's include lobbying firms.
Yes. Let's not forget about them. It's such a
The
ridiculous.
poor mom and pop lobbying firms, though.
Why don't we just replace our federal government with just an ATM that just says Wall Street only on it? I mean, because then, like, why? Then at least more people will know it's a scam. Then at least the mask is completely off.
See, this is why MMT is so important to me, because once you understand how things work, all of these lies go away. All of these shields of false economic concern, fiscal responsibility, debt deficit, taxes paid for stuff, all this stuff, we're going to have to tax you in order to give you stuff. All of this goes away. And what they're left with is they have to say, I want to be rich more than I want to help the millions of people that I represent. I would rather the millions of people that I represent die so I can become rich. That's what they have to say, because the economic falsehoods are taken away once you understand how the economy actually works.
But Jeff, here's what we're getting wrong here, and here's where we gotta kind of give credit where credit's due. Amazon ended hazard pay, but what they did do, they send thank you T-shirts to all the warehouse workers.
It's like a clause in the UK, right? The nurses
maybe we got it all wrong. I mean, this changes everything, doesn't it?
The nurses are being paid with applause in UK, just like this.
And here they're being paid with fighter jets that fly overhead. Fighter jets saying
that
thank
happened in my
you.
state. Yep.
Yeah, and all the nurses were like, "Great, this is awesome! Some fighter jets." I bet there would be no better use for those funds. And Amazon, hey, we're not giving you hazard pay. Come risk your life for us for a not living wage. But here's a T-shirt.
You'll look good while you're sick.
That's right, and you'll be promoting our company while you're sick. What an opportunity!
There you go.
What an opportunity!
Mm-hmm.
So
they have billboards in all the hospitals now.
Yeah. We're being fair here, Jeff. We're talking about the bad, but we're highlighting the good too. I mean, Jeff Bezos, bless him, sending T-shirts to those warehouse workers. What a guy. What a guy. So, Jeff, one final thing here, and then we'll go to the chat, and then we'll end today's episode. So it's Pete Townsend of The Who's 75th birthday. Do you have a favorite Who song? A, and B, I challenge you, because you've done it successfully and well so far in the show. You got to find a way to connect that piece of news to MMT. I don't know how you're going to do it, but I believe in you.
Townsend
of The Who.
I'm sure I know plenty of their songs. I'm not familiar enough with the group to be able to
The
connect
Who?
the name to. Yeah, I know plenty of their songs. I just I don't follow them specifically to be able to say I know specific songs by
My
them.
Generation.
To connect, yeah, of course, that's a wonderful song.
Yeah, Tommy. They did the Tommy album. Who Are You?
Oh, that's great.
Bob O'Reilly. Squeeze Box. Oh man, what else? Magic Bus is The Who.
Graham had some video about a punk band. He's like, I don't know these guys, but Ron was like probably going to say like, oh, I saw them in the 70s and stuff.
Why did he have a video about a punk band?
He found someone sent him lyrics from a very old 82 song from a punk band that actually was like, don't believe your politicians, and it was like really very specific. That was prescient about the lies. But bringing Pete Townsend to MMT, towns are not currency issuers. That's the best I can do. It's the best I can do.
I'll take it. All right, Jeff, where can people find out more about you?
Activist MMT, Activist MMT on Twitter, Activist MMT on Facebook. And there's a website as well. But I have a podcast. I'm putting out I'm getting close to 40 episodes or
nice.
I have at least 20 waiting to be edited. It's first world problems. It's great. So yeah, you can find me there. And my Graham video, which I put in the comments, I guess towards the beginning, that was released yesterday regarding the Federal Reserve, how the Federal Reserve actually pays for stuff. I will send you a link to the PPP article. Activist MMT on Twitter, please.
Good to see you active, man. No pun intended. Activist MMT on Twitter. Good to see you again, Jeff. Hopefully, last time I was in Philly, you and I got to jam, which is why I assumed you were a Who guy.
I'm a music guy.
We played a Tom Petty tune.
Yeah. Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah,
That
it
was
was
so cool.
fun.
I played
blast.
drums on the box. I played
You
drums
played
on the box.
bongos. Yeah,
It was
yeah.
really cool. Yeah.
You had
And we,
makeshift bongos, and we did Last Dance with Mary Jane.
and we sang your theme song live. There's a
And
video somewhere.
we sang the theme song in the show. But yeah, I guess I'll do the brief. I mean, I've talked about it before on the show, but it's been a minute. But yeah, when we played Philadelphia, you know, Jeff came to hang out and you got me a guitar because you said you wanted to play the theme song live. And I was like, yeah, that'd be a blast. You sing the high harmony, we'll do it live. So you got me a guitar. What also happened, why that guitar was used even more, is because there was an issue. Like there was a new bartender downstairs. So we were in an upstairs room and there was a bar downstairs. And the bartender was like new or something like that. And they weren't able to pipe music in upstairs. So as people were coming in, we had no music. It was just silent. And so it was kind of weird. Like people would come into this completely quiet room and order their drinks. So I kind of thought I have to do something to make this a little more like cool and chill. And so I just grabbed the acoustic guitar and was like, I'm just gonna, and I explained it. I was like, hey guys, good to see you. Thanks for coming out to our show. The stand-up will be starting at 8. But until then, we have no music, so I'm going to provide it for a couple songs. I hope you don't mind. And we played a little music. And on the second night, you were like, I'm going to join. And I was like, I hope you do. That'd be a blast. So we jammed out, man. That was a blast.
Well, the first night we sang the theme song because that was originally why I wanted to do it. And then the next night we're like, you're going to do it again. Is there any song that we can do together? And it was Last Night at Mary Jane. It went really, really well. It was a blast,
a lot of
fun.
Man.
Yeah.
Right on. So everyone, Activist MMT, check out Jeff's stuff. All the information on MMT. He's the MMT guy. He's my MMT guy. He's the harmony guy and the MMT guy.
I am definitely the foremost MMT expert that sings. I think that's, well, probably not true, Bill Mitchell, but I do want to be clear. I do want to be clear. I'm not an expert. I'm a smart lay person. I know a decent amount. I've just entered my 3rd year of study. I started in February 2 years ago, or 3 Februaries ago. So I know a decent amount, but I don't want to give the impression that like I'm an economist or anything like that.
You're a developing MMT scholar, enthusiast,
I introduce
practitioner.
I introduce so that you can then go to the experts and learn more. That's
fair enough.
Job. All right.
Right on. Jeff, thanks so much for being here. Celeste says, thanks for being patient with us, Jeff. Thank you for that, Celeste.
She was in the comments of the Graham video. We were talking a lot. That was great.
Oh, brilliant. Right on. Well, thank you so much for that, Celeste. Guys, check out Jeff at Activist MMT. This has been Get Your News On with Ron. You know the drill here. We'll be back tomorrow. I had a day off yesterday. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same channel, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy says meow. I say peace. Peace.